So, Rafiq, first, just start by saying thank you very much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to do this interview. It's lovely to have you here. So, just to kick off, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, thank you very much. Obviously, it's always good to catch up and talk about things you love doing every day, right? And sharing some of the experiences. It's a pleasure to be here. And my name is Rafiq Swash. I'm the founder and CEO of AI Drivers. And at AI Drivers, our focus been supplying autonomous and AI capability for industrial operation in port logistic industry. And it's been a journey since 2016 forwards. And our focus has been looking at how can we implement autonomous technology for industrial operation.
Brilliant. So, tell us a bit about the background. How did this come about? I mean, I know a few things, so extraordinary stuff I've heard already. But for those watching this, tell us a bit about how this came about.
So, yes, I spent my early career in a deep tech in industry and writing algorithms for pattern modeling. And back in the days, we call it business intelligence. It's pretty much generating knowledge from information. So that's what I did my early career around 19 years. And then I moved back to university and working pretty much heavily on a research, teaching, and society building. It was more satisfying, growing new talents and making impact in life and people's life, right? So along that journey, and I worked on multiple European international projects and been traveling on various different conferences and technical sessions. So I was invited in the UAE, and where I was delivering a guest lectures in Sharjah University. They have astronomy center because my background is in AR, VR, and immersive media. So they wanted to build space experience on the ground. That was an early phase of the wearables that are coming in. I'm referring to a late 2015, and I was giving guest lectures about the virtual realities and augmented realities and extended realities and how it's going to be, more advanced in coming years. And they had interest of building a space experience on the ground and in their astronomy center. And there I was introduced a couple of executives they had, on a port background in a UAE, the DP world and that. And there was question upon us saying, hey, is this Google car can drive in a port, right? And obviously I was looking at from more academic background. I said, if it can drive on a city, it can drive on a port. Because, one thing I didn't understand that what there was question was, and I realized that there was very unique environment. The GPS signal doesn't work in a port, and everything is moving, and a lot of pressures in terms of workflow. These vehicles are part of existing workflows, and they need to be there, in time, not before, not later, right? So they had various different concerns: heavy vehicle, diesel truck, pressure brakes, and they never had the access for the new talent. They never had the access for the scalable the solutions on there, right? And that's how the conversation start there. And then they say, would you be able to work on autonomous trucks in a port, right? And I say, I can collaborate and no problem. I'm very much happy to see, what needs to be done. And at that moment, I had a very large research team, leading the research team, working on multiple projects and publishing papers on various different areas, robotics and concrete printing and other areas. And then the actual question started off from that sense. And I looked into the area and spending time in a deep tech and generating new knowledges from a data and predicting every market moves or the various different pattern mapping. And I felt that they don't need autonomous vehicle, they need autonomous infrastructure, right? They need autonomy from driving A to B, right? And the business industrial area cannot have autonomous vehicle without having, autonomous infrastructure, right? Because this autonomous vehicle is, not about just driving A to B, right? So I was more motivated in terms of the capability requires for operating operations, right? In this context, that running a fleet that runs 24 hours, right? You don't need a vehicle that can drive itself, but you need the, more than that, the governing, the optimizations, resiliency, and, all other questions. And therefore, I was motivated to say, hey, it's a quite interesting market, right? And market that I can compete, with the big players, the market that, I can make difference, and the market that I can see how it's going to get transformed, right? So sometimes when you're looking at these new businesses, you need to look at the next big wave, right? So that time there was a lot of company working on robo taxis and, robotics and people shuttle. I felt that those areas will take longer to adopt, right? Because port have a 24 hours operations, and they have responsibility of managing the fleet, running the fleet, owning the fleets, supplying the drivers, right? So I saw how it can be incorporated. That was that phases when nobody trusted and believed that we need to have autonomy. We can't drive taxi. Who want to drive the heavy trailer trucks, right?
Yeah.
At that moment, I felt convinced that this is the first area that's going to adopt autonomous capability, right? And that's how the journey starts, right? So before I start, I have to look at multiple factors in that area, right? Not just you can do the tech, but is there a true needs? What's the customer's motivation? What's the, their current pain point? How it can be addressed at their pain point before they can move on to the next point, right? So, and then once you get there, once you build the market, once you create that market, then how are you going to remains to be competitive, right? So multiple factors that you have to, wait out before you start. And it's been 8 years, and I've never been more committed now.
Brilliant. And just to put this into perspective, those of you listening to this, tell us a bit about how you managed to win the Port Authority in Singapore, because we know Singapore is one of the most phenomenal advanced ports in the world. And how did that happen?
Yeah, I guess it come around 2018. Never knew much about Singapore or that part of the world. So I've done multiple POCs in trials in elsewhere, right? So, and I was invited to participate on an international tender in 2018. And that time it was, they normally invite various different companies, and I was in a young company at the time. And they go through a very complex due diligence process to qualify you that you can participate on a tender. And I still remember I was cracking a joke saying, if you are qualifying to participate tenders at this level of, hard, then I'm very concerned about what sort of process you go, in winning the tender, right? So, and we participated the tender in 2018, and I did a couple of day trips to Singapore, flying 16 hours and spending a day and flying back and going through all that clarification elements. And we propose what we think is the correct way of implementing, the technologies and adopting AI and autonomous capabilities. So we were awarded to try implement the initial multiple phases of POCs in 18. And that's how it started. So they reached out to me to invite him for the tender. So we participated in the tender, and then AI drivers were awarded. And I was very, convinced that now this is really genuinely the validating the industry needs.
Yeah, this is something special. I mean, this is phenomenal. And could you tell us a few other places that you're also operating in terms of ports? Because Singapore is obviously one of the most impressive, but you have some others as well, I understand.
So we have a multiple locations. Some of the things I can mention that on the media, and some of the thing is not on the media. So
that's all right.
Respect our customers' confidentiality. Obviously, PSA and PGP and SAGT in Sri Lanka, they're all on a public areas, right? So we also have some other ongoing the work, right? At the moment, we have done in Malaysia and Singapore and Sri Lanka. We have ongoing work elsewhere as well.
That's excellent. That's brilliant. So your path, so you're the founder and CEO of the company. What what's what's your biggest learnings going through? Because it's brilliant. You know, we hear about all these different tech companies, but there's loads of people who are brilliant at tech. I mean, I know you have multiple PhDs, phenomenally educated man, but turning it into a business is not easy. How would you explain how you made that transformation so successfully?
I guess we can learn from the book the requirements to be a founder or requirements to run a new businesses, right? So everybody say you need to be, be very resilient, right? But for me, it was very different, right? As a new business things, you need to see things your eyes don't see. You need to hear things your ears don't hear, right? So being able to see the next step of movement that's coming in, and how are you going to evolve and learn to navigate, because since I started the business, it's not just a business I started, to be very honest. There's a huge amount of challenges we have gone through, and being in the UK, and we go through the Brexit first phase, and then we had a COVID, and then there was a little crisis on an investment the areas, right? So, and we have to not just to penetrate and define the markets fits for our solutions or product fits, and grow with our customers and look at the customer needs, but we also have to navigate the environment and the situation on that area, right? So when you're running a business that is truly global, right? I mean, obviously, ports are all on the global areas, right? That's why the ports are operated by global operators. So from our business was a global from day one, right? And they're not really reachable overnight. Different time accessibility,
Yeah,
and COVID creates massive challenges. I guess there's no one thing that I can put my fingers on, right? I guess one thing is very true is being able to see the next thing before you can carry out the one, right? So you need to be able to plan your multiple moves, right? And then how you hold on that execution of that, right? So learn to say no. Thing is a lot compelling, which you think at the given time, than what you're doing. I've been in 8 years in this runway. 8 years is not a short time, right? So sometime you need to learn when to repivot or refocus, or when can you refocus, right? And keep focusing. I think some of the hard decisions are: is it what you're doing is the right thing, right? And making sure you remains to be self-aware of the situation, and remains to be self-aware of yourself and the business, right? Are you heading the right directions, right? Or are you trying to be victim of your own quality because you are very resilient? Sometimes your resiliency could be victim of your own self, right?
mm,
You're not realizing soon enough, right? I think being able to learn thing is that you never thought that you need to learn is a one thing, and being able to see things that you cannot see with your eyes, right? Those are
yeah. What would you say was your biggest lessons that you've learned in that time?
I think being able to remains to be vigilant is very important, right? And because in a business, learn to expect unexpected situations, right? So and not you have to get ready. When things are too good, you get ready for things not to be good, right? And meanwhile, when things are not too good, and you need to learn to be things will be good, right? So and expecting that unexpected situation, and then make sure that you are ready for it, right?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And as a founder and CEO, do you have something that you would describe as a daily routine, or is it very varied?
Uh, I think daily routine is that you need to plan your day when you're human. and that's very, very important. You need to find the time frame for yourself. How can you plan your next day or next week, right? And what level of planning you can do. And this is very, very important, right? And then meanwhile, make sure that you're also learn to sustain your quality of productivity, right? You cannot be, unpredictable. You try to gauge that, get that predictable levels, and being able to sustain it, right? So my daily routine is will be try to make sure I have I'm getting ready for the toughest day of the life, right? So that means get your workout done, have your breakfast, and before you rush your computers, before you rush your smart devices, right? So get those things done before could be taken away, right? Because running a startup is almost like driving a car on a mud, right? So sometimes
Yeah,
your steering doesn't respond for a turning, sometimes your brake or throttle doesn't respond, right? So in which case that every morning, make sure that you don't get diluted by the urgency and importancy, right? So my daily routine is how can I manage my energy level? What decision I need to make on that day? Who I'm going to meet? Is it the investors or is it my internal people or is it the project or our products, right? Who's going to meet and who needs me, right? So, and you need to work with your energy level. So I spend most of my mornings and, with dealing with some of the important urgent things, and that's with the projects and customers, because our customers are happen to be ahead of ourselves in terms of time wise. And then afternoon, try to get it done, things that needs to be done, whatever that you find out in that morning, right? So try to spend, almost 50%, try to reduce the working on urgent items, try to work on more important things, right? And continue eliminating that urgencies of the takeaway, and to be very vigilant, how much time you're spending on what, because
yeah,
you are working on the business itself, projects, products, operations, right? Team buildings and cultures. You have so many things on your table, right? And
absolutely.
I realized that the full-time job of CEO or the founder is solving the unsolvable problems.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. And in terms of your routine, then, do you do a workout most days?
Yes, I do. I do have I start my day around as early as 6 o'clock. So get the workout done and then have your breakfast, right? And do your learnings, readings, make sure that you have you're equipping yourself the skill that you need, finding out whatever that you need. That might be, the new skills that you need to figure out, right? Area that you're not comfortable with. I think as a CEO or as a founder, you always, be hunger of the new knowledges, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes, knowing your knowing is very important, right? So keep learning and keep, be aware of the developments. So I start my day and face my day as early as 8:30 and 8 o'clock, but I try to spend my quality 1 hour, try to get ready for that day. And then after that, try to get the most important thing that's pending on me. And I try to plan out 5, 6 things that I need to get it done on that day, make sure my day is very tangible. So I can catch up with my emails and urgent items, that's document that needs to be reviewed or approved. And I make sure that I do that before I can taken away by the meetings that starts sometime from 9 o'clock onward or sometime from 9:30. I
Yeah,
try to allocate, my mornings from 9 onwards. Sometimes it's not really manageable, right? So I try to spend all the important thing clear in the morning, and then go into a race until lunchtime. You have
brilliant.
lunch and then you restore yourself, and then you plan your following that. That might be, with your product team, project team, or getting some deep work done. So because
Hmm.
you plan out when you're having a deep working mind and when you're having the shallow working, right? You cannot,
I like that.
miss those things. You need to realize you plan out who you're meeting with, what do you need in that moment. Do you need too much energy? You have a hard decision to make. How many decisions you're making on that day? You have to factor all out if you want to make a good decisions, right?
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's brilliant.
So
And
I end my day as late as 7, 8.
Wow, so a long day. So a long day. And who does anybody particularly come to mind when you think of successful people? Do you have any role models or people that you admire?
I guess we have experience. We have seen so many successful people, right? And when we say successful, I think success requires definition, right? And is it scaling the company or is it defining the area? So there are people that have gone through a tough time, and defining the new experience and defining the new lifestyles, right? So, and for me, is there's not just one person that can come your head, right? So you have to look at the situation that you're facing. On that situation, you try to find who's the hero, right? I think for every individual, for every human, it's good to have a hero because hero make things look very easy, right? And then you can keep motivated and and being ambitious on that narrative, right? So I would say, when we see that, oh, how hard it is telling, to our customers what the solution that they need, then sometimes, I remind myself that how difficult it should have been when people never had a computer on their hand, that you're trying to tell them that it's like almost like explaining a color a blind person, right? How can you explain the colors for the blind person, right? So I think people like, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and they have done a hard bit of a lot of work which has not been appreciated, right? Because they
Yeah.
they they didn't just build the product, but they also convinced the society that this is needed. This is a new way of doing things. This new way of living things, right? So when I'm looking at some of the successful individuals, it will vary from a situation to situation, right?
No, that's really interesting. And what about, and you're somebody that I know reads. I mean, you've done, what was it, 10 years at university, phenomenal about learning. Is there any particular books, either on business or that inspire you or just for relaxation? I don't know. What books do you enjoy reading or audios or whatever you call them?
Yeah, I'm a realistic person as much as I would like to say I'm ambitious and adventurous, right? So I like books which is really touch on the reality of the site, right? So and when you're looking at the book, there are a lot of, I mean, every book worth of reading once at least, right? But it's just about where you want to grow, right? And
Hmm.
I don't forget one time I had the students turn up to my office saying, could you recommend me a book? I want to grow my skills, and I used to teach gamification and gaming, right? So I said, what book you want me to recommend, right? Do you want to he said gaming book. I said, what gaming book? Game development. I said, what game development book? Do you want to have a mobile gaming? Do you want to have a desktop gaming? Do you want to have a macro gaming or a social? Because it's a very broad area. The game
Very
development,
different. Yeah.
right? You tell me, then I can recommend. I think from the this book side is that I like to read the books which is really discovering new discoveries, things, like the one of the books, that I can tell you that everybody will benefit reading, such as, grit. And the grit is defines about, really that anyone can achieve it, right? Everybody needs to put an effort, right? So and Indestructible or Sapiens, Art of War, right? So I guess there are many books has been published, a culture map, right? So it depends which area you're gonna grow. Like sometimes you map out which area you're gonna grow. Is it your management, or is it your discipline, or is it your awareness, right? Like Essentialism is a good book, right? And obviously Lean Startup. So you can find some of the very well written and well read books out there, but it is important to define where you want to grow, right? For example, compound effect is, power of habits, right?
Yeah.
Atomic habits.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, these books are really redefining what you have been doing, right? Sometimes just finding out that what you're doing is correct and what you're doing is could be improved, right? So re-emphasizing those things are also important, right? Things you're
Yeah.
good. It doesn't mean it does not require, improvement. Sometimes it requires some adjustment, right? So
Yeah.
I always recommend people to keep reading, keep studying, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you got some gems there. You got Lean Startup. I picked up Essentialism, Art of War, Indestructible, The Culture Wars, and Compound Effect. Those were just a few of the ones I managed
Yeah,
to.
Way of Wolves.
Way of Wolves.
Yeah, way of the wealth. This is talk about, straight line models, negotiations and how you navigate, close a deal, right?
Wow.
And there's other book called Built by Tony Fadell. And Built is the guy who was behind the Apple products. And then he built the Nest, the home products, right? So he has been
Brilliant.
a lot, right? And
There's loads. So there's loads for people to get reading. Might take them a few years just to read these.
yeah, I guess, sometimes you don't have to read once you like it, you reiterate every 3-4 months, right? Once a year, right? Or every other year, right? So if you like a book, the culture map is very good. Anyone who works in an international phase, it's important that to, understand the influence of upbringing.
Yes. Yes. That's a big one. I do sometimes teach people who are in the diplomatic world. So that's a book I'm going to grab. I'm going to grab that one. But phenomenal, yeah, some great book choices. I'll certainly look up these as well. I'm a big lover of audiobooks because I don't always seem to have the time to sit and read. But audiobooks are brilliant when I'm in the gym or,
Yeah.
exercising or doing some stuff at home. I find that the audiobooks are a brilliant way forward. But that's brilliant. There's some great suggestions there.
and
What
and, and
in
some of them
terms of, sorry, go on.
some of them is offered authenticness. Some of the authors has read it, right? So it gives you some level of authenticness, right? When you hear from author directly, and you can pick up from a different angle, right? So and that's one of the
Yeah,
advantages of audiobooks, right? You have some level of authentic of those experiences.
absolutely. Fantastic. So what's next? So you're doing some phenomenal things in terms of the world's, as you said, port authorities and so on. Where would you see the business in the next maybe 5 years' time?
I guess the we always feel that a lot of things are done and transformations are being made. I do feel that next 5 years is going to be one of the bigger game changer, right? A lot of development been made for the last 5-10 years time, and the next 5-10 years time will be massive adaptation and implementation and a scaling phase. So in particular in our case, that and we are looking at how can going to sustain that global economy. If you see today, the trading becomes so successful and port logistic become a backbone of global economy. And in order to sustain that running, that make sure that we are getting our medications, make sure that we're getting our, foods and goods and everything, right? And or people sustain the day that they work so hard, and that requires running the all these shipping lines and moving the containers back and forth, right? And today they are suffering massively from shortage of skilled laborers. They suffer massively by creating effective KPIs and resiliency and productivity and the decarbonization waste, because and today they are not just push it to operate faster, do it better, but they are also been pushed by a certain authority to keep emission low and to keep the safety respect in place, right? So new technologies such as autonomous or AI capabilities going to equip the fleet and port operators to be able to continue improve their operations, if it is a decarbonizations, if it is a safety concern, if it is a reporting, how much emission they are causing to the environmental, or what are the new decisions that they need to make, and how the transparency going to come back in terms of the global security and privacy for shipping lines, right? So from our side is that next 5 years is not going to be also automating things, but it will be more about improving things.
Right. That's interesting. And It's interesting on your journey as well. So you got the technical things and all these challenges that the port authorities will be facing. What about from an employment point of view, your staffing team? What sort of things have you learned about having to employ people? Because it's great, as you said, having all the tech and all that, but you've got to employ people. Now, people are tricky. What have you learned about, effectiveness of employing people?
Yeah, I mentioned the culture map, right? So I think
Yeah,
and, it's very, very important to acknowledge the complexity of human and then obligation of the people. We change every day, right? And it's important that the per-orientation, onboarding, and how your culture has been transformed, right? And then also individuals' obligations change over time, right? So I've been experienced this 8 years in this area. So I have my colleagues been working with me for 8 years or more. And I have a colleagues that they work with me in previous life, right? So I've been blessed with my team at AI Drivers. And it's one of the things is very, very important remains to be aware of the individuals' cases, their obligations, their motivations, and their ultimate personal goals, and making sure that they are growing on their journey. And then if you can enable them to grow, and they enable you to grow as well, right? So you need the mindset of that win-win situations, right? Because everyone, on that journey. So try to remains to be in sync and learn to spend not time on those who are not doing pretty well, but you also spend time on one that they are doing pretty well, right? So making sure that they are taking your attentions, right? So yeah, it's a rather complex topics when it comes to people. One thing I'm very vigilant is the circumstances changes over time, and then you remains to be vigilant on that circumstances so you can help to navigate together.
yeah,
And
that's
more
brilliant. Yeah,
importantly, try to be helpful, not helping, right? So because if you try to help somebody, not necessarily that's going to be helpful for them. And I've learned to be helpful and to help rather than helping to helpful, right? So it's very easy to ask people saying, how can I be helpful, right? And then you can also tell them how they can be helpful. It's very easy to align them. Otherwise, making assumptions is not going to lead you right direction.
I love that. That is a lovely line. Try to be helpful, not just helping. Yeah,
Yeah.
because as you said,
Because
you might be trying to help them, but that might not be the help they're looking for.
yeah. Helping is not helpful, but helpful is helping.
That is brilliant. What do you see as the biggest challenge? I mean, you mentioned some of the challenges. You talked about um, skilled labor, you talked about KPIs, productivity, emissions, safety. So there's lots of challenges in your industry. Would you say that's your industry, or is that the port authorities' challenges? How would you see your challenges in your industry?
Yeah, I mean the all the labor intensive industry, lower industry today, or industrial area are suffering similar things. They are suffering from high OPEX, and they are suffering from lack of resiliency in their operations, which they have experienced during the COVID time as well, and they are also suffering from the productivity and safety, right? And soon they have a new target ahead will be decarbonization, right? And in our industry is primarily it's been very evident, shortage of skilled laborers, and that's why the shipping is very expensive, right? I remember reading a news on the BBC, I guess that was 3-4 years ago during the COVID. There was a container that cost 2,000, but cost of shipping that container was like 8 or 10,000, right? Because the cost
Wow.
of shipping is very, very expensive. And in order to, keep the world moving, and they need to reduce that cost of handling, right? And meanwhile, we need to be aware of the new job creations. We cannot be naive, saying, hey, we are taking the XYZ drivers or operators job away. And I remember one time I was on the site and working on the trucks, and I think the drivers has a foreman who supervises, right? And they have shown them, hey, this guy is behind this technology, and they was looking for me saying, oh, where's the Dr. Swash? I said, that's me. And he said, how do you feel taking all our jobs away? And then how many, with 1,000 of drivers and they have 1,000 of families and children, then how do you feel if they lose their jobs, right? I look at the guy, I said, you're very right. How long you been driving your truck? They said 15 years. I said, in that case, how's the family? The man had a son and he goes to college. I said, do you want your son to drive your truck? He said, no, he will be doing other jobs. I said, what other jobs? Maybe doctor or engineer. I said, that's what I'm working for, right? If I don't change the trucks, and he will have to be forced to drive the trucks, because
Brilliant answer.
we don't realize that we need to create jobs that are suitable for our younger generations, right? We cannot be naive. They will do what we do today, right? So the transformations are happening. Today, we have more jobs than people, right? But we just have incompatible jobs, right? Some jobs are too small, some jobs are too big. And that's why we have a jobless things. It's more of an incompatibility, but we need to grow faster to adopt that. And I have my own, friends and classmates that I know from universities. They have studied, but they're still driving, the buses, for example, right? Because they couldn't enter on time on that industry because there was not enough job. And when they graduated.
That's interesting. So you don't see the threat of AI necessarily as reducing jobs, but actually will also create other opportunities.
Massively. We need to look at both sides of the thing, right? So when the vehicle was invented, obviously it has taken the job away from the horses and animals, right? So I guess when the computer was invented, it is supposed to do what human does, right? But it's just adaptation, implementation in our way of working, right? And all of these new technology creates new opportunities, and that new opportunities it could be tangible and could be intangible, right?
Yeah. No, it's fascinating to hear that, because most of the scaremongers around AI are saying, oh, all our jobs are going to go, and then make us all very frightened. But as you said, when the computers were generated, you said, well, you're going to get rid of 100 typists and everybody's going to have a computer on their desk. But the amount of work that's been created from computers is astronomical. You can't even probably put a number to it of how many jobs have been created as a result of people having access to technology, PCs, and so on. So, as you said, old technologies have gone, but new technologies creating opportunities. That's really good to hear that positivity. If you had a chance to do it again, start over again, would you do anything different?
You want me to go again this experience, right? Sometime I would be asked is that if you had the power, would you go backward or forward? I said I will stay stand still, right? I will never go backward, I will never go forward, right? So because I worked so hard to get here, I don't want to go back to school again to go all those assignments and homeworks again, right? So I guess if I'm been asked to do it again, and obviously there are 1-2 things I could have done differently, I would have try to see the next step a lot earlier than later, right? And to try to don't take things granted. One of the things it could be work harder to try to see the next move, right? We never see the COVID come in. We never see how soon COVID was out, right?
Yeah.
So and I guess try to be I would be more vigilant than I could have been.
That's interesting. Yeah. No, brilliant. Thank you. And it's really interesting. So if I gave you £100 million to invest in business, what would you do with it?
Invest in any business?
Any business, your business, anything.
Yeah. I guess it's important that we need to look at the needs of the future, right? So there are certain areas that will be there when we are investing, right? So the first thing you need to split that between low risk and high risk one, and then work out the high risk versus about the reward that's going to give, right? So I would focus on impactful investment or impactful areas, right? And that is includes into the area of industrial areas, into healthcare and education, right? So, and education always remains to be the most important, right? And soon education is going to get regulated, and how that's going to help, right? And how can we grow new talents, and making sure people are harvested in the right directions, and happiness of their futures based on what the work that they will be doing, right? Eliminate those, the false graduates, and try to, harvest them in the right direction. So I would look at, investing into, the education, investing into healthcare, investing into the logistics, industrial areas, right? Where these three areas, I do genuinely feel there's a huge amount of impact and the transformation needs to be done, right? And not really driven by hype of new tech.
Brilliant. Really interesting. Been fantastic. So just to finish off, my final question is somebody out there who's an enthusiast, whether they're in tech, whether they're whatever business they may be in right now, is there any couple of tips you could give them to say, just think about this when you're running your business?
The first thing is that they should always know that they're not alone. They're not the only one they are facing that problems, and there might be, 100,000 of other individuals facing the same thing. That's very important to remember. And they also needs to know is that the good thing requires time, right? And if it was easy, anyone else would have done it, right? And always remember that they need to, there's a reason certain things, if you are running a business, you need to see a positive thing is in a negative happening, right? That means if certain thing doesn't work out, then that you need to look at, try to get up and a lot stronger and do it a lot better in different ways, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, we expect that things doesn't go as we plan, and that's why we do planning, and that's why we do, being vigilant, right? So it's important that they cannot be put off when things doesn't work their way. It's meant to be not work, right? We cannot
Yeah.
not think it's meant to work, right? It's meant to not work, right? And that's what I always tell to my colleagues, saying when things doesn't work, and obviously we know it's not going to work, and that's why we are here. We will make it work, right? Things are hard, and that's why
Absolutely. Move on.
yeah.
Yeah, move on and try something different. That's phenomenal. Uh, you've left us with um, it's just remarkable. So many things we've covered here. It's just brilliant. A refreshing approach to AI and technology. And some tips there. I mean, you don't know how many business owners I've met over the years who always believe they're the only person going through what they're going through. And I say to you, most business owners are saying the same thing you're saying, but they don't think that, they think, oh no, I can't tell anybody because this is unique to me. And they don't realize, as you said, hundreds of thousands of other business owners have gone through the same issues. So it's good to collaborate and learn. So Rafiq, I just want to thank you for your time. It's been absolutely phenomenal interview. You've left us with so many gems, books, ideas, and stuff like that. So I wish you all the best in the future. We'll be all watching to see, where you are in the future. Thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you very much. Lovely catching up, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Brilliant. Thank you.